Hi, my name is Laura Marris, and I am going to read to you today from my latest translation of Géraldine Schwarz's book, Those Who Forget, My Family's Story in Nazi Europe, a Memoir, a History, a Warning. And this is forthcoming from Scribner in September. And I'm going to read to you from a passage in the book where the author has just discovered through her father, Volker, that her German grandparents actually bought furniture that had been taken from Jews who had been deported during 1940 in Mannheim. So all of a sudden, the grandparents' apartment at some point during the war was completely refurnished. So this is a passage that refers to that kind of dubious transformation. Volker started to see the dining room in a new light once he discovered photos of the apartment as it was before the war. There he observed the much more rustic furnishings that had come from Lydia's dowry. Another room also underwent a major redecoration during the war. The Herrenzimmer, the living room reserved for men, where a handsome set of Art Deco pieces, a bookcase, a big desk, and a table, suddenly appeared. This furniture, in particular the pieces in the dining room, which radiated an aura of grand bourgeoisie, didn't correspond to the social status of my parents, my father says. And since these rooms were already furnished, and it wasn't a question of need, these purchases must have been motivated by bargain prices. What else besides Jewish possessions were sold for almost nothing during the war? These new additions included rugs, a piano where my father and his sister learned music after the war, and probably a few of Oma's delicious china teacups. My father never mentioned his suspicions to his parents. And then I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. I don't know if my grandparents saw the Jews being led to the rallying points, then to the station. But when Karl Schwarz went to work that morning, when he stepped out for lunch, and when Lydia went out to take her little 4-year-old girl for a stroll, didn't they feel the tension in the air, that heaviness on the faces of the passer-by, who were more hurried than usual? In the evening, didn't they talk about the roundup over dinner or with their neighbors on Chamisso-Strasse? Didn't it come up the next morning with colleagues, shopkeepers, or friends? This episode probably passed in silence, like a bad dream you forget moments after you wake. For a long time, I was stuck on that date, October 22, trying to understand if it had actually been possible to intervene, and if it wasn't unjust to judge my grandparents, since I myself hadn't lived through the dictatorship. Then I read an arresting passage in Christian Fritzsch's book, where I understood that the key date for measuring the guilt of Mannheim's Mitläufer wasn't October 22, but just after. The Jews had barely been deported when their apartments were sealed. After the first raids on the city of Mannheim, on December 16, 1940, it was decided that these homes would be used to shelter those who had lost their housing during the bombing. The idea was to leave them the minimum, a few furnishings, mattresses, and linens, and to sell the rest at auction. Dishes, porcelain, rugs, books, silver, furniture, these sales were announced in the paper, and it was clear that they were goods from Jewish households. The announcement wouldn't hesitate to occasionally specify household items from non-Aryan property. What made these auctions truly nauseating was that most of them took place in the original apartments, so that the buyers were acutely aware of the people who had once owned these belongings. Considering the massive size of their furnishings, my grandparents must have also acquired their pieces on the spot. Did they know the former owners? Probably not, but I imagine at least Opa entering these vestibules like thieves, intruding into these homes that had been abandoned in the haste of a last-minute departure, where there might still have been laundry on the line, coffee cups on the kitchen table, and a few hairs in the shower drain. At the sight of a child's bedroom strewn with little toys and little shoes waiting for the return of their young owner, or at the family photos still on the wall, existences that were savagely interrupted. How is it possible that these scenes didn't grab them by the throat and force them to refrain from buying anything? And that is one of the questions this book looks to answer. So thank you so much, and take